Hey data fans, Reed here. Today I want to show you a technique on how to properly analyze and figure out the appropriate type of comparison that you would want to do specifically around time intelligence. So in front of us here, what I actually have is three different comparison types up here at the top for month-to-month sales, which just compares monthly sales at a gross level, average daily sales by month, and then average daily sales over the working days. Now, the goal with this being is that none of these are right or wrong necessarily in what to compare, but the thinking behind it is which one of these is the most impactful or meaningful. So I want to get into this a little bit and help us understand that fair comparison isn't necessarily the right term, but which comparison will give you the best insights regarding comparing date periods themselves. So let's go ahead and hop into Power BI and get started. So to start the conversation, let's discuss the typical way that people will often compare values. So a lot of people will do month-to-month sales, or at least use the basic time intelligence of date add to get the prior month. So current month, prior month, and that is the month-over-month delta, and then the delta percentage. And this will let you compare months, but to give some thought to this, think about the fact that like January and February can have a very drastically different amount of days or even open days in those months. So that's when you want to think about what's the question you're trying to answer. These numbers aren't wrong. These are correct numbers for comparative purposes. But are you trying to just see overall, did you get more or less cash in the month? Or are you trying to see how well your months perform against each other? So that's why in this example, and what I'm using, by the way, is a series of grouped items where I have a calculation group in here that's essentially running what you see on this visual. So I just have a series of calculation groups that basically just groups all of my current versus prior month, my average daily sales comparisons, and one that I'll get into in a bit for working sales. A little outside of the scope of creating the field parameter, but I just wanted something to demonstrate the concept that I'm showing you here. So average daily sales gets a bit further into performance comparisons to actually see that month by month, are you actually doing better on a daily basis versus the prior month? And notice that the values and percentages actually changed quite a bit between those. And then one step even further from that is another thought that you can do on average daily sales, but maybe filtering to working days. Now, working days can be something where you simply filter out weekends on the calendar. Maybe you have a calendar that has an open closed series of dates that you've added to your calendar table. However, you want to get a column that logically tells your calendar table, yes or no, this is a working day, is something you can include into here. And just to show you quickly what the measure would look like on that, let's close a few of these other ones down here. The working days one for average daily sales, that would be here. Open this up. All I'm doing is filtering on a working day flag. And again, there's not a right or wrong way to build this. It's really just ensuring that your calendar table has appropriate flags to count the number of days if you're going to average over the days in a month. So 3 comparisons to kind of think about. But again, the broad stroke thing that I want you to consider when doing comparisons is what is the question I'm trying to answer? Because each one of these is giving you correct information depending on the story you're trying to tell with your data, but can give you very different values. So what's the important comparison? Now, to add to this one more time, in terms of being able to show you something else for comparative purposes, I actually even wanted to take it one step further and give you an example of an additional way you can compare average daily sales. So instead of just current and prior month, you can even go so far as to essentially giving custom date ranges for each of those. So what I have here is a average daily sales range 1 and range 2. This one is basically the first quarter from 2024 comparing to the second quarter of 2025. But each one of these drives the value in here for average daily sales and then gives the comparisons next to it. So you can essentially get daily sales for any ranges that you want via the date picker options that you have built into here. Now, the other one was essentially just a series of measures that were grouped in a field parameter. This one, in turn, I added a custom table where I used the word parameter in here, but all I did was I used a DAX generated table to create a distinct list of disconnected dates for date period comparison 1, date period comparison 2, and a little bit of light DAX magic that goes into filtering the ranges to be greater than or equal to the start date from that range, less than or equal to the end date from that start range. So nothing too fancy there, but now instead of just having to look at current and prior month, I can have just a series of average daily sales for either of those two ranges and comparative purposes here as I change around in these. So a few degrees of greater freedom. But again, this gives you 4 examples of how to do some date or time intelligence comparisons that really is determined by the story that you're wanting to tell. Because I want to open up the idea of that for a lot of you as you're thinking about this, because with data, there's many stories that can be told with it depending on the questions that you're trying to answer. So again, just to recap, you have your kind of traditional basic prior month to current month sales. Between months, you could also look at what the average daily sales is. Taking it one step further, you could even filter it to the working day periods. However, you determine what working days is, as long as you have a flag on your calendar table for that. And again, the field parameter essentially just has those date comparisons here. And all I did is I added for that slicer. If I go to the date comparisons in here, get rid of that. I simply just ensured that I grouped them together for a comparison type to label all of these month to month, these 4 calculations to be average and that. So that's why all 4 of them are showing every time I click a slicer for that. Standard field parameter practice to have a parent and a child to group these together for a slicer plus data and a visual. And then last but not least, we have those custom range comparisons that are on this tab here. And that just lets me choose range 1, any dates that I want at all between those to drive my range 1, my range 2 to drive this, and then the comparisons with those. But hopefully this gets some of your creative juices flowing and inspires you to maybe use some of these in your reports. And as always, don't forget that this file is available to download in the blog file section of my model or the website, better said. And as always, if you have any comments, suggestions, or ideas for future video, please drop that in the comment section below. Don't forget to check out some of my related content here in the upper left. And don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and share this video on social media to continue to help my channel grow. And otherwise, I will see you all in my next video.